House Chair, honorable members, fellow South Africans, Bagaetsu, Dumela. You know, every one of us in this house knows that the office of the National Prosecuting Authority has been abused over and over again by the president to shield himself from the law and pursue his enemies. We've all been witness to this. Instead of debating whether or not this is the case, we should rather be using this opportunity to plot a way forward to ensure that this won't happen again. The position of the National Director of Public Prosecutions is meant to be a 10-year term. But over the past decade, it's been reduced to a revolving door of deployed cadres. Since 2008, honorable members, we've had no fewer than 6 national or acting national directors of public prosecutions. From Vusi Pikoli, Mmusi, Maimane, Jiba, Mmusi, and lastly, Sean Abrams. None of them lasted more than a couple of years. And all they had to do to vacate this office is primarily because of one man, Mr. Jacob Zuma. This was either because they weren't prepared to do his bidding, or because it was blatantly obvious that they were being controlled, so much so, honorable members, that the court had to pull the plug on them. Of these 6 people, only Vusi Pikoli and Mmusi acted with integrity and independence. And this, I'm afraid, is what cost them their jobs. All other NDPPs have helped to turn the NPA into what it is today, a shamble of failed court cases, shameful dismissals, and political shenanigans. Instead of fighting crime and corruption, this vital institution of our democracy has now become a key ally of the criminal syndicate that is dominant in the ANC. Ari Khopoteng Vusi Pikoli, when he did his job by issuing a warrant of arrest against Kisilebi, he got himself suspended. And when he refused to withdraw the corruption charges against Mr. Zuma or #JZ783, he got himself fired. Honorable members, in the words of friend Junala, Advocate Pikoli was a man, a person of unimpeachable integrity. And as a result of that he was removed from his job. He was replaced by Mokhathi, a man whose sole claim to fame was that he dropped the charges of 783 counts of corruption, fraud, money laundering, and racketeering against Mr. Jacob Zuma. A decision which was found by the court to be baseless and irrational. After Mche came a famous Mmusi, another Zuma yes man, so thoroughly discredited that the court had no choice but to rule that his appointment was invalid.
Honorable member, can you take a seat? Honorable member, what's the point you're raising on?
Honorable House Chair, I rise on a point of order. The honorable member knows only too well that he can only refer to the president as Mr. or as the honorable president of the republic. He can't just call him Zuma. He knows that. I think it's mere mischief. He needs to be remanded.
Thank you very much. Honorable Maimane.
It is another Mr. Zuma's yes man.
Point of order, Chair.
Order. Honorable member, what is the...
Point of order.
Yes, what's your point of order?
The word, the name Zuma was used as an adjectival noun, not pronoun. So there's no point in prefacing it.
Order, honorable member. Thank you very much. Order. Honorable member. Honorable Fetane is true in the context in which the name was used. If there are concerns, we would actually reflect on that and come back to the House. But it was in reference, as it is indicated. Honorable Member Mandela.
Honorable Chair, the Honorable Speaker cannot refer to a member of this House as a yes man of the President. Can you please withdraw that? Because we are all honorable members in this House. Thank you.
Order. Order. Honorable member, the issue that was raised was relating to a person who is not a member of the House. I want to clarify to members. But what was made as a reference in an adjectival way was a person of so and so, and that person referred to is not a member of the House. So there is, Honorable Member, can I please clarify? The member was referring in his statement to the National Prosecution Authority, the members who have been appointed, those who are acting, so he was making a reference to say, this one left and another so and so in an adjectival, form relating to a person who is not a member of the House. So can we please proceed with the debate?
Chair.
Order. Honourable Member, what's your point?
Chair, I just need you to clarify us that it's not true that we are supposed to call all of us each other honourable. Mr. Mandela says that we must do that. I mean, he's found guilty of assaulting someone. He can never be called honourable. Can't call people who assault people honourable in the House.
Honourable Vusi,
and found guilty by a court. You want to be
Honourable Vusi.
No, you're not.
Honourable Vusi.
It's just
Honourable
clarity.
Vusi, I will switch off your mic now. Can you allow me to?
Clarity.
Honourable members, for the sake of ourselves in terms of time, can we please ensure that we do not have spurious points of orders? Issue that you are raising, Honourable Vusi, you know very well that in the rules, we agree that you can call a member honourable. If you don't want to do so, you can say Mr. But there's nothing wrong in member asking that a phrase to refer to a member be appropriate. Can say honourable or Mr. It choice is for the one who is speaking. Can we please ensure that we do not disturb ourselves in this debate? Honourable Member Maimane, you can proceed.
Thank you. I mean, House Chair, we are discussing Zuma yes man. So how do you rephrase that? Milani is in fact on record, another one, as stating that he believes that the NDPP should not be independent and that the Justice Minister should be able to override decisions to prosecute, which sadly, honourable members, harks back to a past that we don't want to return to, where a politician was able to decide who can and cannot be charged. Similarly, was also followed by Mmusi, an acting NDPP, who was heavily criticized by 12 judges, not just a few, on 4 benches in 3 high-profile matters. She was then blasted by the Supreme Court of Appeal for refusing to hand over the spy tapes. She was also found to have lied to the court in the case of Richard Mmusi and was charged with perjury and lying under oath in the Johan Bossens matter. She was subsequently struck off the row of advocates. Then came Mmusi, an appointment that the president immediately regretted when Nxasana reinstated charges against the president's friends, Richard Mmusi, Lawrence Mkhwebu, and Mmusi. Fellow South Africans, it is of course not appropriate that when somebody does their job inconsistent with the Constitution, that they must keep their job. He regretted that decision, and that was his turn to also go. This brings me to the last appointment, the latest Sean Abrams. He goes by the title Sean Sheep. But fellow South Africans, don't let this fool you. This man is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Abraham immediately dropped the charges against Diba and Mkhwebi before setting his sights on the one-man stand between the president and access to our treasury, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. This is a fight that sent our economy onto a downward spiral, has led to numerous backtracks by Abraham every time his agenda is exposed for what it is. His CV already includes the dropping of charges against Mmusi, appealing the spy tapes ruling, recharging General Johan Boyces, trying to prosecute Shadrach Sibia and Robert McBride, and finally, charging the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan on a top charge, a charge that he had after meeting the president at Little House. What kind of NDPP has the right to have a private meeting with a political party at their offices? It proves that he dances to their tune rather than doing his job as the NDPP. It is in fact only a matter of time before Abrahams will find it impossible to continue protecting his boss. And then he too will find himself shoved onto the revolving door to make way for someone else. 6 NPA heads in less than a decade, and all because of one man. Honorable members, this sadly cannot continue. We can't continue leaving the appointment of the NDPP entirely into the hands of the president. As it currently stands in the constitution and supporting legislation, it says nobody but the president himself. We need to change the way the head of the NPA is appointed, and not to limit the powers of Mr. Zuma, but in fact to limit the powers of all future presidents. We need to admit that the authors of our constitution, perhaps when they were drafting the constitution, had President Nelson Mandela in mind. They never foresaw that in fact a man with 783 charges of corruption and racketeering would one day occupy the first office and have the right to choose their prosecutor. They would have treated the selection of NDPPs in the same way.
Order, honorable member, can you take a seat? Honorable Sir, what's the point of order? Honorable Maimane, you are being asked whether you can take a question.
No.
You can proceed.
Fellow South Africans, the view I'm expressing is not only the view of the DA, but even members of the ANC have expressed the same view. Because in 2008, President then Kgalema Motlanthe said he supported the calls for the NDPP to be independently appointed by the same body, by such a same body as the Judicial Service Commission. Constitutional Court Judge Zek Yakub, in the Menzies Milani case, expressed a similar opinion where he explained the Constitution left to an act of Parliament to determine whether a candidate is appropriately qualified and not only to the President's discretion. While the DA is calling for a constitutional amendment to limit the President's powers of appointment since 2013, there is another way, honorable member, that can ensure that the candidates for the position of NDPP are qualified and independent. The subordinate legislation, the NPA Act 32 of 1998, is already clearly intended to curtail the president's powers of appointment, and it can be further amended to set out the requirements of the NDP. I would therefore propose that an amendment be brought to the NPA Act in line with appointment for judges and other constitutional bodies, such as the Public Protector and Auditor General.
Honorable member, just to remind you again that I'm not disturbing your speech, but remember that the topic was saying the impact into the economy. Yes. Yeah, I'm just reminding the speaker.
It's clear that if we continue in the manner that we are of appointments, we'll always have a president who captures the state and ultimately controls the NDPP, which has significant impact on the political economy of our country. And I think Minister Godin would be the first to testify to that point. And ultimately, if we amend the legislation, it won't be asking the president to lose his constitutional powers to appoint the NDP. We'll be appointing somebody who's been through a thorough and a transparent process. Honorable members, our constitution is considered to be one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. This is our supreme law. Nothing, no law or action can supersede what is written in this text. Governments, especially a government like this one, will come and go. Some leaders will inspire us and some leaders will disappoint us. But at the end of the day, we must appoint somebody who will ensure that the Bill of Rights...
Honorable member, you can take a seat. What's the point of order, Honorable Sir?
Ngaphambili umhlekazi ungaphandle kuphela emxholweni ndicela abuyele kuwo enkosi.
Enkosi bese ndimazisile umhlekazi uyagqiba ngoku. Honorable member can proceed.
The very first thing that's mentioned in the Bill of Rights is everybody is equal before the law and enjoys the protection of that law and benefit of the law. That same justice must apply whether you are an ordinary citizen or the president. This is something we can only achieve an NPA that stands completely independent and free from political interference. That means appointing the National Director of Public Prosecutions who answers nobody but the people of South Africa.
Member, your time is up.
So I want to call every member to support the amendment that will table forward.
Thank you. Honorable member.